Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Emotional Embuffination podcast. I am your host, David Bolton, and here on Emotional Embuffination, we are training to become emotionally buff enough to overcome any conflict in life. And at the same time as we're doing that, we are trying to discover new levels of success and happiness and really maximize the experience of having all those positive emotions in life. In other words, trying to avoid feeling super negative all the time and feeling happy. This podcast is just one of a number of resources I have available. If you want to learn more about that, check out the Emotional Embuffination website, which is embuffination.com. All right, today my guest is Mr. Serban Mare, who is a professional speaker. He's a personal development expert, and he knows a heck of a lot about shifting and controlling mindset and using that to find, I guess, happiness and fulfillment. Is that a fair description?
You hit it right in the head, yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me, David.
Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do the interview today and being on. I very much appreciate your time. Maybe just as a intro to this, can you tell me a little bit about your background? Like, why are you talking about that? I mean, is there something that happened in your life, or where did you come from that got you on this road?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You might, as I'm talking, you might recognize that I have a funny accent, and it's not a Southern accent. You know, I came from Romania almost 17 years ago, and with an idea of what the American dream is. And for more than 10 years, I kept going at it, looking to achieve that American dream, which I did. In my mind, was the American dream was finish school, get a job, find a cushy job that provides a 401k, look to settle into a home, a family, and then go on vacations. And that was my plan, and that's what I did. And I thought that would the only thing that I needed to be happy and fulfilled, which for a second there, yes, it did. But then as time went by and I just stayed in the status quo, I started feeling uneasy and just having some restlessness. And it was weird because everything was fine. You know, I didn't have any problems. Work was fine. Home was fine. My wife and I were getting along well and everything, but there was nothing exciting, nothing that would, make me jump out of bed. And that's where, I felt into this limbo where I felt just dissatisfied. It was just would go to bed on a Sunday night and just felt uneasy about the coming week, not having anything to look forward to. And that's where I started asking myself, is there more that I can do with my life than this American dream that I thought I should be doing?
Wow. Okay. I got to unpack some of that because there's a lot of really fascinating stuff there. So let me back up to, so you're in Romania. How old were you when you decided to come to the US?
23.
23. And how old are you now, if you don't mind my asking?
I just hit 40.
Okay. So it was a little while ago. It was that kind of a normal thing? Because that to me seems like in and of itself kind of a big deal, like making a decision to just drop everything from your home country and go to an entirely different country and start up chasing the American dream. I mean, what prompted you to do that? Like, why not stay back home? why come here?
Well, a lot of it had to do with many movies.
Okay. Was it just the romanticization of US?
Yeah, that was, I think when we're younger in our 20s, the main motivator and the driver that pushes us is to make money. And the situation back home during that time was not that great. You only had a few options, three major schools that you could go to, engineer, doctor, or lawyer. Those were the three options. And even so, you weren't guaranteed that you're going to have a good life. And my brother was already here in the United States, and he painted a good picture of what it could be. So I decided to just come over here, take that leap of faith. And, I came here and realized that I was making in a day what I was making back in Romania in a month.
Wow. So, I mean, to me, that seems like in and of itself a huge step. And that's got to be facing, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's got to be facing a lot of fears and kind of punching through that and a lot of uncertainty and unknowns.
For sure. For sure. And to be fair, when I was in Romania, I had zero responsibilities. Like I was still living with my parents, which was very normal during that time
Sure.
while I was going to school. Uh, I didn't even know how to get an ID, to be honest with you. It's just
Yeah.
everything was kind of taken care for. So making that leap and coming here, it was pretty terrifying. But I had a goal in mind,
Yeah.
right? And luckily, I had my brother here too, who was able to support me, not necessarily financially, but with comfort and ideas, which
Yeah.
made the transition a lot easier.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, did you move in with him initially, or did you just come
Oh
over here
yeah,
and figure it out? Okay. And
we
so
were
what
in
did
a
you
one.
do when you first got here? I mean, did you go to school? Or did you have some educational background that was useful, or like how did you stay afloat when you first arrived?
Yeah. Well, luckily, my brother was living in a one-bedroom apartment, and we put another mattress in his bedroom, and he said, "You can sleep there." And he slept in the other corner, and told me to find a job that made sense for me. And I was already studying electronics back in Romania, so I applied to a manufacturing company here.
Okay.
And luckily, they hired me minimum wage,
Yeah.
and even with minimum wage, it was a lot.
Fascinating. So, I would do you think that the American dream is a real thing then? I mean, because you said you saw a lot of movies, and yeah, I guess there was a, if I'm interpreting what you said right, I mean, there was some romanticization of what you saw about what's here. I mean, do you still believe that?
I mean, for sure, the American dream changed for me into my own version of it. Back when I came here, it was very different view of what the American dream was.
Yeah.
It was for me. It was also the projection of my parents on what they would want for myself and my brother. To have a stable home
Yeah.
and security, and coming here and realizing that yes, that can be attained easier. It was it was easy for me to just be like, okay, what I need to do is find a job, get the house, find stability, and just enjoy life. And then come to realize that that was the generic American dream. And
Right.
if we really want to live a truly happy and fulfilling dream, we have to make our own American dream, not the standard one.
Sure. Were your parents supportive of the transition to the US?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Only because my brother was already here, and they
Got
they
it.
said, yes, you guys should be together.
Interesting. Okay. So you get to the US,
Mhm.
you move in with your brother, you get a job, you're working minimum wage. Did you like go to school or anything, or did you just get training through that?
I finished 4 years of college back in Romania
Oh, okay.
and
Did
put
that
it on
transfer
hold.
over in some way that was useful in jobs here?
The easiest thing to do is to work 2 jobs here, collect and save a lot of money, and then just go back home. And I had 2 semesters that I had to finish, so
I see.
I've I went back and finished my last year there.
Okay. Was, but that education wasn't useful in the US, like once you'd finished it, or was it?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
it
It
was.
was.
It's transferable. Yes.
Okay. So ultimately, where do you get? So you get up to this point where you're kind of, it sounds like you're stuck in the rat race, essentially. Like you've sort of realized the American dream in terms of you're making a lot more, but
Mhm.
you're not feeling it. I guess you're not feeling content. And I think it sounds like this is a problem a lot of people in the US run into. And I know I've experienced this myself, where you just go into the job and you're like, oh, really, is this it? I mean,
Mhm.
seems like that's what happened. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's. I always think about it in a lot of people look at it as burnout being
yeah.
something where you're just stressed and overwhelmed and too
Yep.
much to do.
Yep.
But there's another way of looking at burnout where it's a quiet burnout where there's not stress, but there's just some uneasiness.
Yeah.
Like you feel like there I should be doing more with my life, yet you don't know what. And that's kind of the stage that I ended up in.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily that you were like overloaded and losing your mind. It was just that there was this quiet gnawing that something wasn't right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So you get to this point, you're making a reasonable wage because we're in
Mm-hmm.
the US now, or you're in the US now, and you go back, you finish your education, you come here, things don't seem quite right. You start questioning about what it is that is going to make you happy, I guess, or where did that take you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't an immediate transformation. It was something that I struggled for quite several years. So I went to my job for a while. I loved it. Then it kind of became just something monotonous. And the same thing with my weeks and my weekends. We always think that, oh, the weekends are the best ones, and then you go through that phase of like, oh crap, is Monday's coming, yay, it's Friday type of deal. And it took me probably 3 to 4 years for really that pain to set in, where I knew that I had to do something, and I actually started thinking about doing something, and I ended up actually finding and looking for an answer of what else is there to do.
Okay.
And that's where mindset came into play.
So, well, how did you find my mindset as an answer? Like, is that just reading, watching videos? Like, where did that come from?
Well, the moment it was an interesting moment, because my wife felt that uneasiness, that growing anxiety that I felt, but I didn't know what to do, and she gently nudged me into listening one of these personal development podcasts by Lewis House. He had on Les Brown.
Okay.
He's quite the character and has such a big heart. And I listened to Les Brown, and I don't remember what he said. It made me realize that I have an option.
Yes.
Like, I'm not stuck in the place that I am, and there's no other way. I can take charge of my life and do something with it. It's just a matter of changing the way I think about things. And that punted me to having a discussion with a friend that pointed me towards another podcast from Tom Billio. And he talked in that podcast about the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, where the concept of growth mindset and fixed mindset really came in my forefront, and finally had that aha moment.
Interesting. So once you had the aha moment, what did you do then? Did it change, or like did you have to do something to make it feel so you didn't have that feeling anymore? I'm assuming you don't now. Is that accurate?
The thing is that we hear ideas all the time. Like, you read a book and it's good, and then you read it on a different year or different time, and it's like, oh my god, this is the best book.
Yes.
And I was looking for that something, and the book Mindset just gave me that light bulb that I needed at that point to just look at things differently, just think about them differently. It wasn't instantaneously. And you go through these phases when you're looking to change. At first, you don't know that you want to change, but you feel that uneasiness. Then you have that uneasiness, and you know that you would like to change, but you don't do anything about it. Then you go to the phase where you are really looking for something. And then you move on to the phase where you're like, okay, I know I have to change. I know what needs to change. I'm going to make a plan on how to change. And only after that, you actually go to the last phase, which is the execution phase. So for me, it was going through all that flow of, okay, there's a new way of thinking. I can do certain things. Okay, what can I do? What should I be doing? I asked all those questions and formulated a plan. And the mindset, the growth mindset, says that as long as you put your mind to something and you give it energy, you like what you're doing, and you're willing to put in the effort, you can change. It is as simple as that. But a lot of people have this limiting belief, including myself, that yes, that sounds good, but it's not doable. And the way I've looked to apply it to just make sure that it's true is in my physical. I'm an active guy. I always go to the gym, but I was never a runner. And I'm like, well, a growth mindset says that you can do anything you set your mind to. I always said that I could never run a marathon. I could never run 5 miles. And I applied that in running. And to my surprise, with enough time, a lot of dedication and sweat and perseverance, I ended up running a marathon. It took about 6 months to go through that process, but what that did to me is confirm that if we want to change, if we're looking for something else, we can do anything we set our minds to, as long as we have the will and the necessary time.
So when you come to this realization, so if you want to recap and make sure I'm getting there correctly. So you come to the US, you get kind of stable, you get your job, you get this gnawing feeling something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Your wife recognizes it and kind of nudges you into listening to some podcasts. That triggers like a sequence of, I guess, learning about mindset and kind of, I guess, some self-empowerment ideas that put you in a position where you recognize that you have the ability to change. What, aside from kind of just changing the understanding, what is it that shifted you? And again, I'm assuming now you feel differently, like you don't feel that gnawing feeling of like, this is it. I mean, you feel content with your life and happy. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So what is it that shifted aside from just the mindset? Like what made you feel that way? Like, why is it that you went from discontent to, like, was there anything mechanical changing? I know you said you ran a marathon, but were there manifestations, changes in your life that came as a result of this mindset shift?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you give me some examples?
I mean, the marathon was kind of the catalyst to indicate to me that what I think that I can't do, I actually can. So then I started applying it in other aspects of my life. And one of the biggest one was my inability to communicate. I was absolutely terrified of speaking in front of audience. I remember being in front of 5 people at work and just having to introduce myself, and I barely mustered my words and just got so nervous, palm sweaty and tongue tied, and just wanted to hide under the table, and realized that is one of my deficiencies, but it was also something that I really wanted to overcome. And because I have applied it in running, I'm like, okay, let me see if this mindset works in other aspects of my life. So same thing, joined a Toastmaster club. First few times I was really terrible at it, and the more I went, the more I put intention in it, the more I practiced it, the more I persevere. I started recognizing that things can change. I can become a better communicator.
Interesting. So you actually started going out essentially and chasing things that you weren't before, like you're going out and running. You're now engaging in stuff that's going to take you down a path towards public speaking. Did you feel differently about kind of general work once you started recognizing mindset? Like if you go in and you feel just sort of unfulfilled, did your feelings about being in that same place alter at all?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, because for so many years, I think 2 or 3, 4 years there, I was looking for my boss to promote me.
Yeah,
I wanted a change. And I went to him every year. I'm like, listen, I want a promotion. I want to become this, and you need to give me this. And he was always challenging me of, yes, I can, but you need to do X and Y. And I didn't want to do X and Y. I just wanted. And I was telling myself in those instances that it is my boss's fault for not promoting me, for not giving me an opportunity, only to recognize after encountering a growth mindset that it's now nobody else's responsibility to take charge of our lives. We have the capabilities of taking ownership. And if we start telling ourselves that, oh, I could never run a marathon, oh, I could never write a code, or oh, I could never speak in front of an audience, that is excuses that we use, and that's the trades of a fixed mindset.
Yep. You're describing kind of that victimhood mindset that becomes problematic versus like the empowerment mindset, which to use different labels on it. But.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same principle. I applied it in my job, where I can tell you that a year and a half ago, after a lot of dedication, time, and effort, I was able to move from the job that I had into my career right now that I love. That it is something that I want to do, and I'm energized about. It's the same principles of a growth mindset applied not only in my health, only in my passion of speaking, but also in my career, and it applies across the board.
That's awesome. So basically, you went from living in an entirely different country, realizing a dream that brought you to the US, recognizing that wasn't totally fulfilling, even though you were making a lot more money here, recognizing that you had a lot of power over your own happiness, shifting into kind of a more constructive, empowered mindset where you started chasing things you weren't before and had been previously afraid of, it sounds like, or you're doing public speaking and you're going out and doing marathons. And so essentially 180 your life, and now you feel good. Is that all accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point, it sounds like, of course, since you're a coach and you're doing speaking, you decided to like bring that to other people. And it sounds like some of that was funneling out of already what you were doing because you were going out and doing speaking. What exactly is the message that you're offering when you're doing like public speaking or coaching, I guess, generally? I mean, do you have any key people you're speaking to or kind of key messages that you're promoting?
Yeah, I think I'm best suited to help people who are, 5 steps behind me, and that my key message is to help the me from 5 years ago, where someone's burned out or feels lost in their life, in their career. They don't know if there's anything more for them in life, if they can't figure out what their passions are. It's all those things that we, once we get to a certain age, we ask not so much about the monetary, but the more of a fulfilling, meaningful life that we can have for ourselves. And I really work with people to help them discover the passions and build something meaningful for their lives that they really helps them live a happier and fulfilling life, where Sunday night comes along and they're not dreading going to work. They're excited about it. Their head just hits the pillow and they're like, yep, I did an awesome job this week. I can't wait for the next week. That's my target, and that's my hope for anybody who wants to work with me.
That is awesome. Yeah. And it's funny because I know that feeling of burnout. Maybe it's a little different than what you described, but I had this period where as soon as the weekend would start, I mean, you kind of described like the feelings of the weekend. It didn't feel that great. Like I remember as soon as the weekend would start, on the first day of the weekend, I was already dreading going back on Monday. And so it was like my whole weekend would be ruined because the whole time, all I was thinking about was the fact that I'd have to go back to work again. And I didn't want to. And it felt like a different kind of burnout because it was like lawyer burnout, but it felt, I mean, I went through my own like transition, I think, to get to a very similar place that you were, using some very similar principles. I mean, some of what I was looking at was things like the mindset book. That's a classic, and that was a pivot point. And I mean, there's so many different ones that I think are circling around some of these same basic ideas. What would you say to somebody who's in that mode? So let's say that they're just feeling unfulfilled in their job. They're the you of 5 years ago, or whenever that was, or the 5 steps behind you, whatever the time frame on that was, and they're sitting there saying, I don't feel right, something I could do better, I'm not really content. What do you think is the first step for that person?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you get to a point where you don't feel like you have any options. Like you're just stuck in this rat race, and anything that you would do, it won't amass to anything. And it's a difficult situation, because because of all the things that you're dealing with in life, you don't have any clarity for anything compelling in your future. And the thing that I emphasize, and I applied in my life too, is you don't have to start a revolution with your life. You don't have to change everything 180, because then your brain is just can't handle all that. And it's not about a revolution, but rather an evolution, where you really look to change a certain thing in your life. Like you give yourself 15 minutes in the morning where you're just grateful for your day, and that just sets you in a proper mood. Or you contemplate about all the good things that you have in your life, so that you recognize more of the things that you want to do, less of the things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
It's just starting with one simple thing like gratitude, for example. That has tremendous benefits, and it's scientists now have proven that that priming of gratitude is beneficial for anybody.
Oh yeah.
And don't I would say don't put pressure to change absolutely everything. That's why New Year's resolutions don't work,
Yeah.
because people want to just completely change everything in their lives, in their diets, or whatever it is. And I'm here to tell you, don't change everything, just change one thing, and that will help you move you a little bit closer on the change that you want to make.
What happens if you try a thing? Because this is an experience I've had, and I feel like I have an answer, but I'm curious what you say about it. What happens if you're in that mode? You're saying, I don't feel right. Something's not working. I feel depressed, or whatever the situation is. I feel unfulfilled for whatever reason, and you try making a change, and you implement it, and you're kind of doing it for a while, and you don't notice any difference. What then? Would you keep going with that? Do you change? Do you add on? Like, what are your thoughts there?
It's Yeah, and this is kind of the part of the mindset where the idea of a growth mindset is that you don't really emphasize so much on the end goal. You're looking to really value the steps that you're taking towards that end goal. So the end goal may come or may not come, but as long as you're doing something that you enjoy, that it gives you energy, right? If you're looking to change something, you better change something that you enjoy in your life, right? Do something that gives you energy.
Yeah. Well, but I
And
guess what I'm getting at though is, let's say you're in that place where what you're doing is not giving you energy and you don't enjoy it. Let's say you're in that job and you just feel like you're stuck in a cubicle, or you're miserable and you don't like it, and you could do more or do better or something else. And you've asked your boss a couple of times for that promotion. Your boss is like, you got to go do XYZ, and you don't want to do XYZ because that feels painful. But you try like one little thing. You try gratitude, let's say, to take your example. And I get up in the morning and I'm saying, I am grateful for, and then I still go to work and I still don't have a promotion and I still feel like I'm just unsatisfied. Where do you go from there?
yeah, it's cool, because this is exactly the things that I experienced. I went to my boss. I told him that I wanted something different. He didn't do what I thought he was supposed to do, which is not his fault.
Sure.
He had a group to run, not to babysit me. But you got to you got a lot of times when we're in this funk, in this negativity, we're always thinking about the things that you don't want. And I was there for such a long time until I finally flipped the script and looked at, okay, what are the things that I want to do? And identifying those things for me has helped me realize that, at work, I get that spark, that little energy from running projects. That was my little spark. And I went and pursued that. So in parallel with my job, I started going for my project management certification, just because that was something that I was enjoying. And it wasn't something that my boss asked me. It wasn't something that anybody has told me to do. It just felt to me like it was a direction that I was doing something that I liked, and I was running away from the things that I didn't want to do. And that has helped me build upon my career. Once I started getting involved, like I said, it's just those one things that we do that are giving us energy. They don't have to be all day, has to be different. It has to be one thing that we do that we really enjoy, that gives us that spark. And as I started going after my project management certification, I started having that more energy and that clarity of, okay, what else do I want for my future? And that made it a snowball to where I finally realized my path towards a better career that I really enjoyed doing.
Interesting. Okay. So sounds like chase your joy. In essence, kind of find one little thing that kind of pushes you towards a place that makes you feel better. Is that correct? And then
Yeah,
just kind of keep chasing wherever that path takes you, and it'll ripple out into a lot of other places.
just one thing. Yep.
One thing. I like that because that's actually consistent with a lot of what I describe in the emotional buffination stuff. Particularly when somebody's in that real funk, as you described it. I actually have a analogy that I like to draw. At least this resonates with me. I don't know if it does with anyone else, but I have this description of, if you imagine you go out to a junkyard and you find this car that is just utterly destroyed, like the engine doesn't work, like nothing's working, like windows are missing, it doesn't have doors, like there's no tires on it, it's just trashed. And then you go in there and you're like, wow, this car is totally broken. And then you replace the alternator because the alternator was broken, but you're like, I'm going to fix this one thing. And you replace the alternator, and then you go, well, I did that, but the car's still not running. And to me, that was always sort of this analogy of what happens when somebody's in this like really dark place and they make one little change and say, it's not working. And I kind of say, well, you have to keep going. You keep doing, getting excited about it, keep chasing and keep doing more stuff. And at some point, there's going to be this threshold moment. If you keep replacing stuff and fixing things and doing things differently in your life, at some point, you're going to have this threshold moment where it's going to transition into, wow, everything's amazing. Just like your car is running at some point and we're going in there.
Yeah.
So, that's the model I've been using.
Yeah, and that's to end the point of the story is that after going and getting my PMP certification, I was still at the same job. I was still doing the same thing. I still wasn't doing the things that I wanted. And even after getting the certification, it took another 2 years of me pursuing that dream career of being a program manager to that actually happened. And it's like you said, every day I was replacing a part. Every day I was talking with someone. Every day I was learning one more skill that I can implement at my job to make me better as a program manager. And that's it took 2 years to really get the job that I wanted.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's actually kind of an impressive story. You've gone from crossing the globe with no money and kind of a scary situation to, realizing essentially the American dream, not just in a generic sense, but at a level of self-contentment. That to me, that's all quite impressive. That's pretty awesome. And so now you're spreading that message by way of both speaking and your coaching work, correct? What are kind of your general speaking topics? Like, what are you talking about when you're, I mean, I know kind of the generic theme, but I mean, are there more honed in themes?
Of course, it's mindset. It's one of my main points where I help burned out professionals just see things in a different light, right? Have a growth mindset to really move them towards that clarity that they need for a more compelling future, right? Help them see that where they are, it's not a sentence. They can always change and have a more compelling. And I talk about the idea of true happiness and fulfillment. And if I may, this idea of true happiness, I always think of happiness in two different ways. Of one is being happy in the moment, and the other one being happy in life versus happy with life. And during that time where I achieved the American dream, I was happy in life because I started chasing the momentary pleasures, like going to parties, like enjoying a good glass of wine or going on vacations. And those are the satisfaction that we get, but it's just momentarily. That's a false happiness. And if you're looking for true happiness, it is this process of doing something difficult over an extended period of time that really makes you proud of the things that you do. Because I'm sure, David, you're like me. You've done certain things in your life that, man, they were hard, they were difficult. But aren't those the things that you're the most proud of?
Sometimes, yeah.
Overcoming those things, and that's the type of happiness that I'm talking about. True happiness is pursuing something meaningful that we care about, in service of others that really lights up your spirit. That's the true happiness and fulfillment that I'm chasing, I'm living, and I'm wanting to help everybody else find theirs.
That's interesting. So do you feel like there's a balance point between kind of the momentary pleasures versus the, following your calling in service of others? Or do you think that the kind of momentary pleasures are something entirely different, like they're a distraction or just a hedonistic pleasure, or like what's your
Yeah,
feeling on the contrast between those?
yeah, we're not robots, David. We need to chill and watch some Netflix. We need to go on a vacation. We need to break every now and then, have a beer. I don't think we should run away from those type of pleasures, but
So it's a
we
balancing
should
act.
we should not only chase those type of pleasures, because
Right.
if that's the only thing that we go after, social media is such a clear indication, right? That the
Yeah.
instant dopamine hit, it's like a drug.
Oh yeah.
You get that high, and then you feel that high has to bounce back, and then you feel crappy about yourself.
Yeah. So
So
in essence, find something that you can do in service to others that gets you excited, but then simultaneously every once in a while go have the beer or go to the party.
yes, yeah, you can't be a robot only
Right.
chasing the hard things. Some people do it. I like some moderation and balance. I think you can have a glass of wine every now and then, but not a
Still go
glass of wine
crazy.
every day.
Right. Yeah. But it's funny. I mean, I won't go too far off on this, but on the wine topic, I've been debating with people recently about whether it's better to just completely avoid alcohol or just have some level of moderation. And they seem to be finding different philosophies, especially with people that seem to have like alcohol addiction issues or that have kind of gone through some really dark places. But do you have thoughts on that? Or
Yeah, I have an opinion on alcohol, and it's not really related to addiction. I mostly look for optimizing my health,
sure.
and I know that even having a glass of wine or a beer before bed, you're really killing your restorative sleep.
Oh yeah.
So some people take I don't I've heard people take weed, some kind of a blend of marijuana to help them go to sleep. But if you drink a beer, a wine, some alcohol, or some kind of drug to help you get to sleep, you're not really getting that quality restorative
Yeah.
sleep that your brain needs for the next day to be up to function properly.
Yeah, and that's very consistent with. I read some research not too long ago, although I couldn't really articulate it very well right now. But it's very consistent with what you just described. This idea that a lot of people will use either drugs or alcohol or both to get to sleep because they'll say they can't sleep, but then
Mm-hmm.
once they actually go to sleep, because it may help them to get to sleep, but once they're in the sleep state, they're not getting into the right REM state, I guess, or
Mm-hmm.
there's something's going on that they're not getting a deep enough or restful enough sleep, and so then they end up being even worse than had they just never used anything. So
Yes.
seems very
Yeah.
consistent.
I'm a big proponent of having your health in check, because if you don't have your health in check, you're really not optimizing your energy to be able to pursue hard things, and
Yeah.
then your brain just defaults on couch
Yeah.
and
Oh, for
potatoes.
sure. Yeah. I'm a big fan of, I'm here again. I'm totally in agreement with you on this. I mean, I think that you have to have both a mental state, but there's also a physical state. Like you have to run your body, you have to do things that get it activated, and those things are intertwined. You very
Mhm.
often, if you can get sick, or you can just allow your body to atrophy if you're not getting some kind of exercise. I know you mentioned like the marathons. Are you still doing that kind of thing, or what do you do now to get the exercise?
I just, due to time, I scaled them to half marathons. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a good way for me to kind of be with my thoughts for an extended period of time. So I still run.
Yeah.
Once a year, I do some kind of a race. Yeah.
And I feel like I know that you did something recently that I think is pretty commendable. And then this is probably a good segue into that. I feel like I have to bring it up.
Oh.
Do you do any hiking?
Not to that extent. I know you're referencing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly tell me about that? Because I think it's super cool.
Yeah, Kilimanjaro was quite an experience. It's in Africa. It's an impoverished country, but it's the most amazing country I've been, and the whole experience was just mind blowing. And I keep reflecting back on the whole journey, and you end up at 20,000 feet elevation, but
Yeah.
you have a whole team with you that they're called porters that help you with all the tents and the food and everything else. You're carrying a day pack, but it's so grueling because of the altitude. It's just mind blowing. The one thing it's wild and I took away from that trip is the fact that these porters, there's that's their livelihood. These
Mhm.
guys are walking up and down a mountain every week, for miles on end, carrying all these different things. And the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that we're walking up the mountain, and they're walking by and they're singing,
And
and
they're
we're
what?
singing with them. They're just singing. They're laughing. Their hello is jumbo, and what Hakuna Matata is don't worry,
Yeah.
from the Lion King.
Yeah.
And they're just, they don't have a lot, and these guys, they feel fortunate to carry 30-40 pounds in the back of their on top of their heads, and they're just singing along. And that definitely put a perspective in my eyes of, we're living here in a society that we have so much, and somehow we're not happy, and
Right.
they have so little, and
And
then
that they
they
are.
they make the most out of it.
Yeah.
It comes back to perspective and mindset
And gratitude.
and gratitude, indeed.
Yes. That's and possibly some exercise. Now they're obviously getting a lot of exercise and working their bodies if they're going up. How long of a trip up is that? How long does it take to get to
we
the top?
we took it's a 7-day route, so it was longer. I think all in all it was 42 miles, that we did in 7 days. The as I'm active, it wasn't overly difficult. The altitude is something that I wasn't used to, so it was
Sure.
interesting to see that my stamina at the higher altitude was so low. It's the last hike, which is about a mile and a half.
Yeah.
It took us over 8 hours.
Just because it's so
It
steep.
it's so steep, and there's barely any air. It's just you're snailing your way up the mountain, and it's crazy. And it's in the middle of the night because you need to get down before sunset, so it takes a long time.
Why do you have to
And
get down before sunset?
Hmm?
Why do you have to get down before sunset?
Oh, you don't want to be there in the middle of the night.
Mm,
It's dangerous coming down. You might break a leg or something. Up is, it's a lot more safe, because the trail that you're coming down, it's a lot steeper.
I
Don't
see.
need that much control, but it's unreal. It the amount of effort that you have to exert to hike that 1.5 mile. It's
Yeah.
a 5,000 elevation gain. It's something.
Got it. Man, you've done some fascinating stuff, my friend. It's just that alone is like a huge accomplishment. That's really impressive. And it sounds like you've continued to get some mindset related stuff out of that, which I think is one of the other cool things about the physical stuff. Like when you're just even not Kilimanjaro or anything, but even if you just go hike a normal mountain, I think there's so
Mhm.
much to on top of just the general health benefits of getting exercise. I mean, there's so much that you can relate back to, just like when you said you ran the marathon, you're like, I can accomplish that. I can do this thing that I didn't think I could do before. And if I can do that, what else can I do? And I feel like there's so many things in that realm that are like that. I'm a fan of martial arts too. And I think you get a
Mhm.
lot of comparisons in martial arts to normal life and dealing with conflict and emotions and all that stuff. So that's pretty awesome. Um, let me ask you my final question here. And I ask this to everybody. And then as soon as I do that, maybe I can get your kind of, if somebody wants to learn more about you, where to go. So my last question that I ask everybody is, if you could offer just one piece of advice to people about emotional health or strength, and you couldn't say anything else, but just this one piece of advice, and you thought this was the most important thing, what would that piece of advice be?
So many things running through my head.
Got you thinking.
I will say, and I'll end with a Henry Ford quote: "Whether you think you can
Yes.
or you can't, you are right."
Yeah.
It is so much more in our head than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment we believe that we can do something, we have the willpower to go and get that something.
I think you're dead on. I totally agree with that. Serban, thank you very much. If somebody wants to learn more about you or reach out to you in some fashion, how can they do so?
Yeah, they can either visit my website, Serban Mare, SERBANMARE.com, or they can look me up on Instagram. I try to put there some tidbits of knowledge that I learn and I like to share with everybody, so we can all learn together and be better, be
All right.
happier.
Perfect. Serban, thank you very much for agreeing to do the interview today. Thank you for doing the interview today. And I guess we'll wrap it up there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Awesome conversation.
All right, so that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope that you have found this useful. I hope you can take some little nugget away and use it to make your life just a little bit better. Like we were talking about in the show today, you keep adding those things on, and at some point you hit that threshold where everything just starts becoming better and better and better. But if it's not immediately becoming better, keep going, keep adding things, keep improving, keep learning, and find a way to optimize your happiness and overcome all those struggles. Remember, this is a process. It's much like working out. You keep doing it. You keep doing it. You keep going to the gym. You keep going to the emotional gym, so to speak, and you keep working on this stuff. At the end of the day, I want you to go from a place where you are saying things like, the struggle is real, to saying, what struggle? Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you on the next show.